We are playing NGS.
Extraction.
Yeah.
That's not your jam. You didn't like it, you thought it was pretty mid, kind of like we did. It's homework. You just have to get through it and get it done.
It's
because
homework.
It gives you your levels.
Homework.
It gives you the gear you're starting with. It unlocks the areas you're going to and unlocks.
I mean, couldn't you argue that's almost the case for any kind of game? Because like a lot of times they have you go through a story or something. Like at least in MMO, they kind of have to go through like a main storyline. Like Final Fantasy 14, for instance. So I feel like that's kind of like just an entry point of like, are you going to like this kind of game? It kind of just like ease you into the combat with some, easy stuff so you can actually understand what you're doing. Because it is a fast-paced action game, not everybody's used to that kind of thing. Though seeing your character be all derpy next to everyone else, yeah. That's the thing, it's kind of like showcasing your character too.
True.
Like in the cutscenes. Showing it off.
Kind of think of that
the glam you got on.
Call of Duty.
Right, you return to the sands? No! Not again! Please, no more. No more sands.
Skill points.
Of course, it gets everywhere.
All of that gets done as part of unlocking for your character. And what it does is it creates a situation where the player feels that they need to get through the story as quickly as possible. The devs feel like they need to give you every tool as possible to get through the story as quickly as possible because it's a stopping point for you. And you don't really ever go through it and experience it or enjoy it. I'm not saying I experienced the way I experienced it, but you never really experience or go through the story and actually, appreciate what it is for what it is, so on and so forth, right? Like, you never really have that moment. Even if it's not that great, you can't really have that moment the way that things are structured. Now, this is something that's very common amongst MMOs. You'll find that...
I'm confused what he meant by that. So because you're just going through the story right now, you can't appreciate it for what it is? Do you guys know what he means by that? I mean, I think there's just people that just don't care for story and they'll skip through it as fast as possible, and there are people that care for it. And that's just for any game.
Yeah.
I think that's honestly just for any game. I think the biggest difference is that the long, like how long the story is for this game versus other games. Like this game, it's super short. In other games, it's typically longer. Like way longer. Like when it comes to MMOs and stuff.
I think it's because of the generation detention span. That if they're watching, let's say, YouTube video, they could only watch YouTube shorts. They're not ready for a 60-minute video because it's too long, or a 50-minute video is too long. Their attention span is reduced in each and every generation. So 30 minutes of a video, it's kind of pushing it. 2-hour video, they had to take breaks because it doesn't compute to their mindset. It's like if you're gonna watch a Lord of the Rings series, right? You know how long those movies are, or Star Wars, or Harry Potter. If you're gonna go to the movie theater for a 3-hour movie, they won't be able to, or a 4-hour movie, stay there. It's kind of like a, ADD, like what I have disorder, or hypertension disorder, things like that. They won't be able to stay there that long. I'd be impressed if they do.
So maybe that's the point he's getting at, is like because he experienced it as it was happening instead of all in one go, you can't appreciate it as much. I guess like it because it isn't broken up in chunks.
I don't know.
Like what he did, I don't know if that really, because I guess like you weren't waiting for it as long. It's almost kind of like the same as like can you appreciate an anime as much if you're binge watching it, like you waited for all the episodes to come out and you binged it instead of like watching it as it was coming out week by week? That's pretty much what he just said. Can you appreciate it as much if you didn't watch it as it was happening? I think there's like some truth to that, but also for the most part, I think you could appreciate almost the same. He implied the game treats the story as something to get over with, not something to experience. But he also says something about appreciation.
Before he goes any further, I think what he's trying, both of them are trying to say is like, let's say Destiny. When Destiny 1 first came out, and the first Vault of Glass, and then you're going through the journey from other DLC that is coming, because the vanilla game is complete, but the other content forward hasn't even started to make this IP Destiny grow, as in they made Destiny 2 and their other DLCs. And I think that's what he's saying. The process of going and the journey until like someone waited to get the game, the complete game from with all the DLCs and all the content and all the bugs and the patches and the fixing things like that. That process is already done. You just need to go through it. And I think that's what he's saying, that my experience is going to be different from yours. And you're not going to go through the same experience and the hell that I went through. And you just got it easy because it's already done. Everything was already made. Everyone went to the process. They did the glitches, the cheesing, the cheating, and all that shit. All the shenanigans. You're just going through it without, any consequences and, any toxicity, things like that. I'm guessing that what's critical is saying what he was saying from the anime point of view. And mine went, the Destiny point of view. I'm guessing that's what Krono is saying. I'm sorry if my voice is starting to sound groggy and like maybe lower. And sometimes my voice, like, I lose it. It's just, getting tired. It's late, really late.
I can back it up a little bit.
Kind of like we did. It's homework. You just have to. And the thing you'll notice is that there's not really an early game in PSO2 NGS. NGS doesn't really have an early game. The early game is once you finish the story. The story is like one giant tutorial, to be perfectly honest, and not a great one, to be fair. It's like one giant homework tutorial. Like, if you like the story, like if you're a fan of the story, then cool. You enjoyed your time and you went through that story itself. But if that's not your jam, you didn't like it, you thought it was pretty mid, kind of like we did, it's homework. You just have to get through it and get it done. Because it gets you your levels, it gives you the gear you're starting with, it unlocks the areas you're going to, and unlocks your skill points. All of that gets done as part of unlocking for your character.
Mm-hmm.
And what it does is it creates a situation where the player feels that they need to get through the story as quickly as possible. The devs feel like they need to give you every tool as possible to get through the story as quickly as possible because it's a stopping point for you. And you don't really ever go through it and experience it or enjoy it. I'm not saying I experienced the way I experienced it, but you never really experience or go through the story and actually, appreciate what it is for what it is, so on and so forth, right? Like, you never really have that moment. Even if it's not that great, you can't really have that moment the way that things are structured.
Yeah, I'm talking about the end part. Like, I understand that he says, like, it's like homework. That I can understand. Some people can perceive it that way.
Yeah.
But for those that like story, he's basically saying you can't appreciate it the same way that I experienced it because of how it's structured right now.
I agree.
And I think what he's meaning by this is because it's all out in one chunk right now, instead of you experiencing it as it was coming out, you can't appreciate it as much. The game does lock some UQ behind what story chapters you have completed, the devs do rush you. But once again, that's like any MMO. You can feel that rush, and I feel like it's because of Krono's mindset. Like I said earlier, he's more like mechanical. He's more about the gameplay than anything else, I think. So he's like one of those players that feel like he needs to rush. And I think that's just going to be different from person to person.
Yeah, I definitely
Like some
will
people
agree.
are going to feel rushed because, oh, I have to unlock this thing, I have to do this thing now. Because if I don't do it now, then I won't be able to get this UQ because it's like a timed thing that only happens every few hours. Or it's like, oh, I can't do this specific daily because I'm not this far enough into the story. Or I can't do this weekly because I'm not this far yet. So people definitely think that way, but I don't think that's everybody. I don't think that changes the appreciation of the story. I mean, I think the only way to like really fix it is like just having the story be longer. Because I think the only way to like have a mid game that doesn't feel ass is if like there's a reason for veteran players to play with you through a mid game, which Final Fantasy XIV does very well. Because when you go into the random queue, I forget what it's called. I haven't played it in a minute, but there's like a random queue, and it randomly queues you through any of the dungeons that you have done throughout the story, and that includes low-level ones. And then it lowers your level, lowers your gear, your stats to match what kind of dungeon it is, and you still get rewards. Yeah, the roulette, the do-do roulette. Yeah, exactly. So it matches down to where that person that's doing it for real, doing it for story, doing it for whatever, it matches you to them, and you still get a benefit for doing it. Like, you're still getting good XP or money or whatever else you get for your character, no matter where you're at in the game.
It also kind of reminds me of the teacher system, matching your level to your peer. That is like maybe the fresh meat, the newer player. It's like level 1. You're matching their level for you could be at par with them, but also, having fun as you go along the journey and to get them in a certain level or, helping them out in a certain way for you're not beating the monster. They're learning how to play the game. And like he's been saying, that it's like tutorial. The whole game is like tutorial. Yes, because Sega is holding your freaking hand and they're not letting the go.
So I think that's the only way to have a mid game that doesn't feel like ass. Because if you don't have it that way, all these veteran players are going to be at the end, and then nobody is going to be in the middle besides new players.
Yeah, that's what
There's just
sucks
going
about
to be
it.
way more people. This is how it always is. There's going to be way more people at the end than there is in the middle.
Yep.
That's just how it always is.
Sadly.
So there needs to be something like that. But I don't know if that's really how this game is structured. Like you said, it's not structured that way.
Nope.
To have a mid game, because there's no like dungeons as part of the story. There's no like raids and stuff like that. It's kind of just like little encounters and kind of like 1v1s with bosses that don't really need the people.
Pretty much.
And there's no dungeons that you're doing. The only thing...
Also, with that in mind, you don't need build. That's why they cut the build off. There is somewhat of a build, but they scrapped it. So that's why pretty much every class and every weapon is pretty much almost the same. It's a linear mindset of things, and that you don't need no skill for it, because the skill was already gone. They made it as easy as it can get, and casual as it can be. That they lost how NGS should be. Now it's more focused on a sim simulator that it's a dressed up. You're dressing up your doll. That's pretty much what it is. You're dressing up your doll so your doll can go for an adventure, and as easy it can be for won't stress you out or burn you out. You're gonna win it. It's gonna be a little difficulty or a little challenging, but at the end of the day, your peer's gonna help you beat it. End of story. And all you're gonna do is waste your money and pay to win to get X, Y, and Z and get your pretty outfits. That is it.
That could use multiple people is sometimes when they have you face against like a Dark Falls. Yeah, I still don't understand like the appreciation part though. I think like when I was talking about it, where I was saying it's like there's a small truth to it. It's that like I feel like you as a community feel because you're all going through the same thing at the same time when something releases, you're gonna talk about it. You're gonna engage with it. Versus if you kind of just binge something and go to the end when it's already been released for a while, you're not gonna have that community engagement. At least not nearly as much. Maybe you can talk about it to like a friend that just did it with you, or something. But you're not gonna have like the whole community, talking about it because it just happened. It's like, oh, this thing that just happened in the story, holy shit, that was crazy.
Yeah.
Or it's like, oh, I can't believe they did that. Like, what the fuck is this? So I think that's like the only part of it is like the community part of engaging together. I think you can still appreciate the story just the same in bulk than if you did it as it was coming out. And if you feel like pushing through the story, there's still the quest counter to go back through the story if you want to actually watch it.
If it's not that great, you can't really have that moment the way that things are structured. Now, this is something that's very common amongst MMOs. You'll find the conversation comes up very often. What's the end game like is a question that gets asked a lot in a lot of games. Because the average MMO player, or the average live service game player, looks towards the end game. What's it like once I've done all of the beginning stuff and I'm a part of the major community and I'm...
Before I let Krono keep going, you cannot compare all the MMOs because look at Terra for an example. Look at Warcraft. They have amazing stories. The process going through, it's like different. It's Warframe, another one. It's a process. I don't know why he said that every MMO is the same. No, because the process and the journey is similar, but at the same time slightly different. And in this case, NGS, it's, they literally threw shit on the fan and let it spin. And things just went crazy and hectic that the community got, toxic because of the waste that NGS PSO2 developed, and they are comparing it to NGS. So, two separate different IPs, but the same game, the same development process. From the only difference is they're the same thing, they're just that different generation. And there was a player that I've talked to that I was comparing NGS and PSO2 in different games, but he's like, it's not fair comparing NGS or Phantasy Star Online with other games. You have to compare it with the same family. I'm like, you cannot compare the same family. If you compare apples with apples, you're gonna have the same taste. in the same mindset of things of you're you're pretty much have a narrow mindset because you're just focusing on how this apple grows and how this other apple is growing. Red apple and blue and a green apple, or a different type of color of a red apple. You're just focusing on apples. You're not focusing apples and oranges because there are fruits, but different type of fruit. So you need to compare the different tastes and see which one is better and what needs to be improved, what is needs to be adapted, fixed, change, things like that. But if you're comparing it with the same family from the same, parent, your open mindset won't grow and your opinion won't grow or change. Sadly but true. So, in order to have a proper opinion, in order to have a proper open mindset, you need to compare it with something else besides the same family member, apples and apples. Because that's how the company made you process and think like that. It's kind of like Nintendo. Okay, I'm gonna bring real life scenario. It's like Nintendo. Their baby is Pokemon, and Game Freak doesn't want no one to copy them or their formula of what is Pokemon. And so Pal World came into play. They didn't like that. So they're trying to destroy this new company that made something similar but it's different. Similar mechanic system, but Nintendo and Game Freak of Pokemon, it's stupid because Pokemon had different process of, who copied Pokemon. There's Digimon. Who copied before Pokemon? Monster Rancher. Monster Rancher was the first one before Pokemon. Okay? Then you have Yu-Gi-Oh! Then you have other things, other, anime besides that. Okay? There's Duel Monsters, there is, Dragon Ball Z. There is other things besides that. You know, and like Cardcaster. If you remember that anime, Cardcaster is like a 16 or 14-year-old girl, and then there's monsters in, you know, these cards. So kind of it developed how Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh franchise. So Nintendo forgot about those. Okay. So they're trying to put the blame and patch every, mechanic that to brand their Pokemon and for they could sue anybody. That's like Power World. And, Nintendo kind of stupid. No, not kind of, really stupid. Pokemon that's suing PAL, they are even more stupid. But besides of, my opinion and the train of thought process, if you want to know more about, me talking about Nintendo, how their stupidity is against Power and other things, I might make a video of it, so stay tuned. I'm thinking about it. But anyways, going back.
I'm doing things consistently. Like, what's it like when I get there, right? What is that process like? What is that journey, or what's that goal like?
It is
and
a
it
journey.
creates a situation where most players are concerned with that goal, and that's fine. That's a very common thing that happens in gaming. But
there's no goal.
You take devs that also only care about that endpoint. They want to get you through everything else, and the endpoint's all they're really worried about. And I feel like we're kind of there in NGS, where like there are parts of the story I really appreciate and I really enjoy. They're really, really good.
I think
Especially
it's going
near the
to a
end, it's gotten
tangent.
really, really, really good. Like I know I've kind of talked down on the story quite a bit here, but I'm gonna be real with you guys. The ending of the current version of the storyline asks a lot of very interesting questions. I have a lot of very interesting questions and a lot of really cool things going on. So I'm actually thoroughly happy with the story itself and where it's at. And I think honestly, a lot of people keep asking when's the next part of the story because they also enjoyed the story and they want more of that.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of like what I said with the community part, but it also might be to him the questions that linger, the mystery of what's coming next, is the appreciation part to him. So because we had to wait for certain chapters that were a big deal, at least in terms of this story, were a big deal, because you're just going through it back to back to back, you don't
Procrastination isn't your fault. It's a broke mentality fueled by self.
have that waiting period. So you're not like thinking, oh wait, maybe this could happen. Oh, what's going to happen next? Oh, is this going to happen? Is this character going to be involved? Or like, is this big monster going to show up? I think that's what he's mainly talking about.
I think so, but also, again, he played base PSO2. So, the players that played base PSO2 has a, like, what is happening next, and they are already theory crafting what's going to happen next because of like he said, there's questions, and the mysterious part is like when they're gonna drop the other chapter. So going back to like since he got married in the game and out of the game, this is his baby. He wasn't focused as much in the story because he comparing it apples to apples. So base PSO2 and NGS. And now he's like, since I'm gonna keep playing this game, since I got married in this game as well, I need to appreciate everything that's in the game. So he's revisiting probably other stuff in this game that um, gave us. So he's appreciating more of the story factor. He's appreciating more on, you know, other things like the Egyptian tower, the pyramid that we have, and other, other little goodies here and there. But it went obsolete. And since he cannot do the best in slot, or he's trying to, he's like in that weird position, like we talked earlier, that he don't know what to do because best in slot is not best in slot anymore. It's paid to win, but also everyone has it. And it's like now mid tier now. Best in slot is not best in slot anymore. So he has to. He's in a journey of finding what he's missing. I'm guessing. I might be wrong, but I'm not Krono, so I'm not him. He's a different persona. He's a different, a person that thinks a little bit different, but we have something in common. We think the same or similar, but like I said, he's different, and I'm different. Critical's different, so we have different opinions and a different way of thinking and different how we process things. So I'm guessing he's rediscovering himself, and I'm guessing that's where the frustration is, that he's not understanding but he wants to understand.
finally got Sega to get where, like, this is always a thing with the Phantasy Star team. Like, when they pop off, they do it well. So when they've gotten there, we're like, okay, get there, do it again, do it again. No, you guys.
I
do it
agree.
Yeah,
again.
I honestly felt like the latest part of the story was actually, in my opinion, rushed.
Yeah.
I felt like the last part of the story was actually not great. I felt like, what was it, chapter 7 itself was good, but what they did with Vile was bad.
When they do that.
Okay. So I haven't done chapter 7 because of battle power, and also I don't want to rush into getting there because there's going to be other things, other opportunities to get me to that point. So I'm not going to rush. But also, chapter 6 wasn't bad, it wasn't good, but it was, pleasant enough that I enjoyed it. So there's like question like what's gonna happen next. So that's where your theory crafting starts, and you're asking some other players that have played what they think of it and things like that. So that type of journey is fun and all. But like they say, when it can't go to a certain threshold, when Sega went to their peak of making a certain story mission, um, you know, really good, that's when I guess he enjoyed it. But when shit hits the fan, eh, like anybody else, it's just like, whatever. They could have done better and things like that. But yeah, and like critical has been saying that the chapter 7 story, it's good, but what they did with the monsters, it sucks. So can't wait to try that out. Whoopee.
Right, like when we're there, it's great.
Not necessarily the boss fight itself, it's more how fast the boss fight happened from what we just saw in chapter 7.
Through like the baseline, the story, and it
was way too fast. There was no build up whatsoever.
Where they removed the battle power gates from the story. That's pretty telling. That is also concerning, because I personally go through the story once a year. I need to do that for this year, but I personally go through the story as a new player once a year. I want to say it was last year. No, I did it the year before that too. It's just like,
so does he want there to be the battle power gates still, and people struggle with nobody around to get through these battle powers? There's no way. That would make the game infinitely worse. Because then you'd have to do content that nobody's fucking doing. And plus, because there's so many like augments and stuff being sold on the market for like dirt cheap, that can just get you around the battle power gate anyways. You just have to do these little weird tricks instead of just being able to go through.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is not a thing that should get added back.
Player series, but that is just a series. Actually, I did this more of a like.
It's kind of just like a waste of time.
We're talking about having problems with the story, so I just went ahead and did this, and I'm going to make it kind of a yearly thing that I do.
Because we were literally just talking earlier about how there's so much investment for a single piece of gear. Exactly. Imagine being forced to invest along the way constantly and then instantly throwing it out just to get through battle power walls.
Yeah, it's kind of like phone. You're getting a new phone, and then there's a new update, a new upgrade. This is like Apple 12. There's an Apple 13 or Apple 13 and a half. And then there's going to be Apple 14, Apple 15. And that's the process that we are going. So, and then he's just going revisiting how, the first Apple was that he got, and then going gradually updating. And he's like, going to that certain journey or certain phase, and he's starting to see different points of views. But it's really tricky and iffy on that perspective, train of thought.
That'd be fucking terrible.
Yeah.
That'd be so bad.
which is go through the story without any form of knowledge of the game. Basically, unless the game.
It's kind of just like
tells
wow
me
moments with no build up.
specifically to do something, I don't do it.
Exactly.
And this was before they removed the battle power gates from the story. And what I found was that if I only followed the knowledge the game had given me, there was no stopping point.
I
no
disagree.
Battle power gates.
I disagree on that because like he said, if you're going to revisiting the old content and starting from scratch, you still have all that struggle from there. But like you said, if you have the knowledge of, like I've said before, if you're going to the settings, right? And then you go to system and you go to help and you go where it says um, game guide, it's gonna help you progress from the story. That's a knowledge. And with that knowledge, from going from from 0 to 100, that is, you know, not the average player. You're playing as what you're knowing and what you could take advantage of. If you're just a player, for a beginner, new player, you're not gonna have that knowledge. And it's like myself, once I play NGS for the first time, or PSO2, what's the first thing in your mind? You're just gonna say fuck reading. You're just gonna play the game as is, and whatever, it's in front of you. You're not thinking of, oh, I'm gonna read the pamphlet of the freaking story, the guide, and the tutorial, how to help you and how to go to the process from being maxed out and how to um, take advantage of certain things in certain courses. He already knows how to manipulate the market system. So if he's stuck in a certain point, he could just ask a friend, and behind the scenes, and he already has the equipment that he needs. So it would be much faster to take from one account to another, and ooh, uh, it's a easy step. This is what you need to do without telling you. He could transfer certain his gear and equipment and just blaze on through from 0 to 100. It's quite simple, quite easy if you know what you're doing and you made many characters. Even though that you say that you could do it from scratch and not using the help of the game has given you. That's taking it as an experience and a lesson and just doing it as the journey and the process and the struggle. He's missing the struggle part and the journey that goes through it. So veteran players knows easy way out if they're making content. But even gamers that is veteran players that's not making content, they know that process. They know that easy step. Oh, you need to do this and that. Simple, easy peasy lemon squeezy. But players that know and learning the game don't know those things. Maybe they watch some YouTube videos, maybe helpful tips here and there, but they're not gonna use every single thing because the journey and the process. You're not gonna if you're stuck in a certain thing, you're gonna watch a video, see if a certain content creator talks about it, things like that, and like, oh, okay, this is what I need to do, this is what I'm missing. You don't need the game guide. You're using, other content creators' experience, so you're just following through. So, you know, I don't know. That point of thought in the train of process, what Krono's saying, I disagree with what he's saying. I could very little agree, but to each their own, and every player has different mind process, how they play the game, and different journey and different mindset, experience.
There was nothing that stopped me from continuously moving forward. And it wasn't a situation of I used knowledge that I had outside of the game. It was quite literally, I only ever used what the game specifically told me and handed me. Did not purchase anything extra, did not grab anything off the market that I could have gotten cheaply to make my life easier. That is what I did the entire way through. And I'll have that, up on the channel every year. I gotta get that done again for this year, but I'll have that up on the channel.
Is this a problem again? Because you can do the same exact thing in Final Fantasy 14, you just keep going forward.
Exactly.
You can literally do that. You can just basically keep just doing just story. There might be like a point or two where you need to farm a level, but all you have to do is the duty roulette for the day, and then you can keep going forward. That's all you have to fucking do. That's what I did. That's what I literally just did a few months ago.
Yeah, because each and every game has a certain process of this game's gonna be exactly the same thing as the other game. So, like I said, apples and oranges. It could be something similar, like Destiny and Borderlands. Something similar, not a different category of game, but the processes is very linear and kind of the same. Just that, different things. So like Terra and Warframe, MMO, but slightly different. Not the same whoever created it, but it has like a, you kind of get the process. But there are certain things that's going to be a little different, slightly different. So like my mentality of the economy, a certain game that has a certain similar economy to this one, is going to be viable to another game. So you're taking what you learned to one game to the next game, and the next game after that.
And what I learned was that a lot of...
It just, in Final Fantasy, that stretch is way longer because there's actually fucking a decent story, and of course, it's across multiple expansions.
Yep.
Points that people were having with the game, and a lot of points that were a problem for players, was tutorialization. I talked about this on Twitter not too long ago, but tutorialization's pretty bad in NGS and a lot of games nowadays, where tutorialization's done via info dumps and images that are just popped up on screen, and I think that's a really bad way to do tutorialization.
It is bad.
Games that do tutorialization very,
I do agree with that.
Games similar to that of like Dark Souls 1, where there's an entire zone that's quite literally teaching you about all the mechanics of the game by making you do them, like you do individual mechanics in the game, and then once you get out of the tutorial area, you don't even realize that you've gone through a tutorial, more or less. It teaches you everything you need to understand and know about the game itself, and that's how tutorials should really be. Not that it should teach you everything about the game and what you need to know, but it should be done in a way that you don't even realize it's a tutorial. If you realize you're reading a tutorial, most people are going to skip over that. And that's what kind of clued me into the real problem that existed in that situation. It wasn't that the game was too difficult or didn't give me the tools, it was that the way the game was teaching you was in a way that people were not going to understand, or they didn't want to understand. And that's understandable because I am the same way. When I want to get into the action, dude, I don't want to stop to read. No one does. That's an understandable situation itself. Now, granted, I push back against those players that always said, oh, the game didn't tell me, or the game didn't give me the information, because it does. You didn't read it. And that's fine. I'm not going to tell you that, hey, you're wrong for not reading it, but I'm not going to allow you to lie about it either.
Future crit here, something that I forgot to mention, but I was thinking of at the time, is that also, again, with Final Fantasy 14, because of the length of the story and what they have you go through, such as like the dungeons, it kind of serves as a long tutorial itself, because in the first couple of dungeons, It's very simple, there's barely any mechanics. Then, as you keep going along through dungeon to dungeon, or even like some raids in between, they are building upon the mechanics each and every time. And basically, all of these mechanics are continuously used throughout the game. So you are ingraining them into your muscle memory, and it's very useful for once you get to the end of the game. But then with New Genesis, they don't do anything like that with the story. They just throw you into random encounters or fights with bosses, but there's no mechanics to learn.
Hold that. Before he goes any further, I can't hold my thought process right now, but it's like putting you with a pen full of puppies, and each different type of puppies is a random encounter. So each puppy has a different personality. So if you're trying to hold one, grab one, one's probably gonna run away, one's gonna go towards you, one's probably gonna nibble on your leg, and some of them is just gonna go round in circles. So it's random encounter in NGS. It's not like a linear path, how a certain process that has to be made for you could make sense and know how to distinguish certain kind oh fuck a certain you know movement, or it's not required for you to know certain battle mechanics and what you need to do on that process. But yeah.
For time to get to know them before you get into endgame. And there is some mechanics with the Genesis, believe it or not, such as like the orange attacks where you can't just counter or dodge them, you need to actually move out of them. There's also mechanics with like button presses and whatever else, downs, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But all of these story quests really are at the moment are just testing areas for the new abilities that you're getting through like cocoons and towers, your class abilities. But that doesn't guarantee a new player is going to learn those set abilities. I don't remember.
True.
I know there was like some story quest at the very beginning. There's one for sure that makes you multi-weapon. I don't know if that's still a thing.
Yes.
I know
at the
it makes
beginning
you
of the game.
multi-weapon. Is there story quests? Because it's been so long. Is there story quests that make you enhance?
Yes, and when you finish the prologues, you're into this tutorial phase that I think is in chapter 1 or chapter 2. Before you rescue the robot dude, I forgot his name, and before you fight the dragon, it's gonna be around in that middle stage that it's gonna ask you to what's it called, multi-weapon. And then from then on, I think there would be like 2 or 3 missions, and then you're gonna fight that dragon to find that robot dude.
And make you like put on an augment.
Yep.
And make you do the class skill stuff. I know there's like a story quest that makes you get a skill point, makes you do a cocoon. I know that for sure.
Yeah, that's all in Alio process.
Like teaches you that. I think there is like a story quest to do the class skill, but can't remember if like the enhancement and the augment thing was just a side quest or if it was part of story.
It's part
I
of the
don't
story.
remember.
Situation where that's exactly what's going on, and that's totally.
But also with that, it doesn't teach you very well.
No.
To be fair.
Have you heard? Reading glasses are outdated. A new technology for the elderly. Nothingness is here.
The guy just tells you, oh, throw some random gear to enhance.
That's why it's like very forgettable. You just want to finish the process. It's like other content creator says, just do what the story tells you, and just just do those type of things, and then just trash it because it's not rememberable. Just do the first augment that you have and that weapon, So you could just have the benefit of unlocking certain things. And from then on, once you reach retemp, then you just, you're winging it. Still kind of like the tutorial phase, but it's like you said, it's like homework. Once you complete the homework process and everything is just easy peasy lemon squeezy supposedly, then you have to watch tutorial of YouTube videos and other content creators, how you do this, how you do that, and things like that. It's, another tutorial process,
It's
other homework.
when in reality that's like the worst thing that you could fucking do for enhancing because that's such a waste of Meseta.
Yep.
But yeah,
Fine. Like again, everyone has their sort of situation themselves. Everyone is different and unique. Maybe you're cool with reading, maybe you like that, but I know personally, I don't like having to stop and read tutorials. I'll do it because I enjoyed it. It's just one of those situations that exists when it comes down to the whole gaming situation. But like going back to our original topic here, is the whole battle power situation. The battle power gating is what we realize is that players issues the tutorialization had nothing to do with the battle power gates. But because players complained specifically about the battle power gates being a problem, they were removed.
That was in the beginning.
So now we have an entire storyline where the game never.
Yeah, I think it's mainly because like you just get stuck in weird spots where nobody's at. I think that's like the main issue of like if they kept the battle power gates, that would have been the issue continuously. Because that so many people would be stuck behind these gates. Like they'd have to like do some random shit that nobody else is doing.
I do agree because they should take off the gates of battle power of everything from this point forward, till, because since we reached the cap of 100, now it's battle power requirement of further throughout the game. But out of vanilla, once we haven't reached level 100, it should be level requirement. And even from up to chapter 7, it's level requirement of getting to point A to point B. It shouldn't be battle power requirement. That would be in chapter 8. That should be battle requirement, because everything from 7 and down should be easy. And this should be a step of a checkpoint, we could say, that you need a grind and get certain materials to be battle required to get a certain armor and weapon. But they should have practiced that at the get-go, at the chapter 2, and then to chapter 3, and so on and so forth. But they didn't do that. So that's why we're in this weird phase of, the point of the game, the state of the game.
They'll be all alone. I mean, like I said, you can do like little tricksy stuff by buying stuff of other people, but I don't think you should have to rely on buying things in the player market.
Agree.
To get through the story. I don't think that should ever be a thing.
I do agree on that, because I think no one should be required of going in to the player market till you reach Stia. Once you reach Stia, like I said earlier, and you beat this Stia entirely, then you're required, and it's open for public uses, the market system. So like that, once you haven't passed Stia and you haven't beat Stia, you shouldn't be required to play the market or use the market, because excuse me, because people's gonna manipulate you in a certain way. They're gonna manipulate you regardless, but it would be less, so new players and players that's coming in could concentrate of self-improvement and having that hustle, having that struggle to get to point A to point B with friends, so co-op, or solo. But this begs to differ. The story mission should be co-op friendly, not soloing it by yourself, so you could gain an experience and more enjoyable and another love to the game. But they didn't do that. So it's not the development team's fault, it's the management and the company, Sega, that's screwing everything over, making what NGS or PSO2 in general from any different genres of PSO2 and their evolvement of the first game that they made and up to now. It's, weird. And the process of going from the old PSO2 games and up to now, they probably didn't make the best, um, you know, um, managing or finding a way how to make this game better. They're just thinking of money, and that's what's any game. But yeah, they definitely screwed up in this one, and probably PSO2. I don't know, because I heard different stories and different point of views.
Stops you to say, hey, are you doing the things that we gave you and we had you set up to do? So you actually ready to do the next thing? That is